Who do you think you are walking through here? Tara Wilson's shoulder slams against the ancient oak's rough bark. Her federal court briefcase crashes to the sidewalk, spilling appellate decisions across Monument Avenue's pristine concrete. Look what we caught, Garcia. Officer Brad Williams yanks Tara's arms behind her back, his voice booming across the quiet street. Another wannabe lawyer playing dress-up in our neighborhood. Bet you can't even spell constitutional law, can you, sweetheart? The zip ties click tight around Tara's wrists. Her legal documents scatter like worthless paper. A small crowd gathers, phone cameras rising. Brad shoves Tara harder against the tree, her cheek scraping against bark that's witnessed decades of Richmond's complicated history. This is what happens when you people forget your place. Federal appeals court rulings bearing Tara Wilson's name as lead counsel flutter in the morning breeze like fallen leaves. Tara's phone buzzes against the concrete where Brad threw it. The caller ID glows bright in the autumn sunlight. Governor's office. Have you ever seen justice so twisted that it becomes the very evil it swore to destroy? If you believe that no one should ever face racial harassment from those sworn to protect them, type justice below. 2 hours earlier, the morning began like any other in Tara Wilson's modest Jackson Ward home. Sunlight crept through lace curtains, painting golden squares across hardwood floors that creaked with each careful step. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and vanilla candles as Tara moved with practiced precision. Morning, Mom. 17-year-old Tyler shuffled in wearing his debate team hoodie, textbook balanced in one arm. His sister Jasmine, 15 and already taller than Tara, followed with perfectly braided hair and a chemistry project tucked under her arm. Are you ready for today's presentation? Tara asked Jasmine, spreading homemade jam on toast. The kitchen filled with the warm scent of strawberries. Born ready, going to prove that molecular gastronomy isn't just fancy cooking. Jasmine grinned, her confidence radiating like her mother's. Tara's briefcase sat open on the counter, revealing thick legal documents stamped Federal Appeals Court. Case files peeked out. Constitutional law challenges, civil rights appeals, employment discrimination suits. Each folder represented someone fighting for justice in a system that didn't always listen. The morning news crackled through the radio. Today, the Senate Judiciary Committee will vote on Tara Wilson's historic nomination as the youngest black woman ever appointed to the Federal Court of Appeals. Legal scholars call her appointment groundbreaking for civil rights jurisprudence. Tyler glanced up from his cereal. Mom, are you nervous about the confirmation? Tara smoothed his collar, breathing in his familiar scent of soap and youth. Nervous? No, determined. Absolutely. Her voice carried the quiet strength that made Virginia's legal community take notice. Through the window, Jackson Ward awakened slowly. Mrs. Dorothy Jackson, 78 and sharp as her morning wit, tended roses that survived decades of neglect and gentrification. Her weathered hands moved with purpose, just like Tara's grandmother used to. Tara stepped onto her front porch, breathing deeply. The air tasted of possibility and blooming magnolia. Historic brownstones lined the street, each one a testament to black excellence that survived Jim Crow, urban renewal, and systematic neglect. Morning, Tara. Big day today, sugar. The whole neighborhood's praying for you, Mrs. Jackson waved from her garden. Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Your prayers mean everything. Tara's walk to the federal courthouse took her through Richmond's shifting geography. Jackson Ward's soul food restaurants and family-owned shops gradually gave way to Monument Avenue's grand mansions and manicured lawns. Each step carried her from community to territory. Her phone buzzed with messages, fellow attorneys offering support, civil rights organizations expressing hope. A text from her law school roommate. You've got this. Judge Wilson. Judge Wilson. The title still felt surreal. Tara checked her watch. 7 a.m. The committee hearing started at 9 but she promised to meet with Attorney General Robert Anderson first. Important nominations demanded early preparation, and today's confirmation would reshape federal judicial landscape. Her briefcase contained more than legal documents. It held hope. Employment discrimination cases that could protect thousands. Voting rights appeals that could expand democracy. Criminal justice reforms that could heal communities like Jackson Ward. Monument Avenue stretched ahead, lined with oak trees that witnessed centuries of history. Some held Confederate monuments until recently, others sheltered underground railroad stations. Today they would witness Tara Wilson walking toward her destiny as one of America's highest federal judicial officers. What Tara couldn't see was Officer Brad Williams adjusting his rearview mirror 2 blocks away, scanning for anything suspicious in this neighborhood where he believed certain people didn't belong. The distance between them closed with each step Tara took toward her future. The morning felt pregnant with possibility, as birds sang from branches that once bore terrible fruit, but now offered shade to anyone seeking shelter. Tara's heels clicked against sidewalk cracks, where weeds pushed through concrete, nature reclaiming what was always hers. She passed a construction site where workers installed a historical marker, Jackson Ward, birthplace of black excellence. Tara smiled, thinking of Tyler and Jasmine, Mrs. Jackson's roses, and the countless dreams deferred but never destroyed. Her phone contained 17 missed calls from reporters wanting quotes about her historic appointment. The questions were always the same. How does it feel to break barriers? What message do you have for young black women? How will you handle the pressure? But Tara's focus remained on the cases she would hear, the precedents she would set, the justice she would serve. Her nomination represented more than personal achievement. It symbolized institutional change, proof that America's highest courts could reflect America's diverse population. 2 blocks ahead, Brad Williams's patrol car idled at a red light. He adjusted his rearview mirror, eyes scanning for anything suspicious. In his 8 years patrolling this district, he had developed strong opinions about who belonged in Monument Avenue's prestigious neighborhoods. His partner, Tony Garcia, reviewed morning dispatch reports. Quiet morning so far. Couple of routine traffic stops, 1 domestic disturbance call. Brad's attention focused on a figure approaching from Jackson Ward. Professional attire, confident stride, obvious comfort in a neighborhood where he believed she didn't belong. Garcia, you see this? Tony glanced up, observing Tara walking normally with her briefcase. She looks like a lawyer heading to court. Nothing suspicious about that. Exactly. Brad's voice turned cold. Since when do they work in federal court? The radio crackled with routine updates. Traffic accidents, burglary reports, domestic disputes. Real crimes requiring actual police work, while Brad manufactured suspicion from prejudice and power. Tara checked her phone. 7:15 a.m. Attorney General Anderson expected her at 8:30 for pre-hearing preparation. The entire federal legal community would watch today's confirmation proceedings. She quickened her pace, heels clicking against concrete still damp with morning dew. Her briefcase felt heavier with each step, weighted with the responsibility of representation. Not just her own career, but the hopes of countless others who saw their futures reflected in her success. Law students who dreamed of federal appointments, civil rights attorneys seeking precedent, communities demanding justice. The morning news had mentioned unprecedented support for her nomination. Legal organizations, civil rights groups, and judicial associations all endorsed her appointment. Even traditionally conservative legal scholars praised her constitutional expertise and judicial temperament. But Tara also knew about the opposition, anonymous emails questioning her qualifications, social media campaigns suggesting she was an affirmative action appointment, the familiar doubts that followed every minority breaking institutional barriers. Brad pulled his patrol car alongside Tara, window rolling down with mechanical precision. The sudden engine noise made her look up, meeting his hostile stare through tinted glass. "This is it," Brad murmured to Tony. "Time to remind people about boundaries." The morning sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows through oak branches. Tara's shadow stretched across concrete below, mingling with tree shadows in patterns that seemed to predict collision. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Tyler. "Good luck today, Mom. Make us proud." Another from Jasmine. "You're going to change everything." Children's faith felt both inspiring and overwhelming. They saw their mother as invincible, capable of transforming injustice through sheer determination and legal expertise. But Tara understood the fragility of progress, how quickly advancement could become backlash. Monument Avenue's grand mansions stood like silent witnesses to changing times. Some residents embraced diversity, Others resented intrusion into their historical privilege. The neighborhood's evolution mirrored America's broader struggle between inclusion and exclusion. Brad cut his engine and stepped out, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across Tara's path. His hand rested casually on his service weapon, a gesture both routine and threatening. "Excuse me, miss, need to ask you some questions." Tara stopped, clutching her briefcase handle. The leather felt reassuring against her palm, connecting her to years of legal training and constitutional knowledge. But she also recognized the moment's danger, how quickly routine encounters could escalate when power met prejudice. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" The question hung in the morning air like morning mist, deceptively calm before the storm that would change both their lives forever. Behind them, Mrs. Jackson continued tending her roses, unaware that history was about to unfold in her neighborhood. What happened next would transform a routine walk to work into a federal case study of constitutional rights, police accountability, and the price of justice in America. "Shall you tell me?" Brad replied, his voice carrying the authority of 8 years patrolling these streets. "You seem lost. This neighborhood can be confusing for people who don't know their way around." Tara's grip tightened on her briefcase. The casual condescension felt familiar, the same tone she'd encountered in law school, courtrooms, and professional conferences. The assumption that her presence required explanation. "I'm not lost. I'm walking to the federal courthouse for work." Tony reluctantly exited the passenger side, clearly uncomfortable with his partner's approach. Morning joggers slowed their pace, sensing tension. A woman walking her golden retriever crossed the street, avoiding the developing scene. "Federal courthouse, huh?" Brad circled Tara slowly, like a predator testing water. "What kind of work exactly? You got some sort of cleaning job there?" The insult hung in the air like smoke. Tara's legal training kicked in, cataloging each violation of proper police procedure. No reasonable suspicion, no articulated criminal activity, no legal basis for detention. "I'm an attorney." Brad laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off nearby mansions. "Attorney? That's rich." "Let me guess. Public defender, ambulance chaser, or maybe you're one of those legal aid types stirring up trouble in our communities." "I don't see how my profession concerns you, officer." Brad stepped closer, invading Tara's personal space. His breath smelled of coffee and power. "See, I've been patrolling these streets for 8 years. I know who belongs and who doesn't." Residents emerged from their homes, some curious, others deliberately looking away. Tara recognized the dynamic, witnesses choosing sides before understanding the stakes. The same psychology that enabled systematic injustice through collective silence. "I'm going to need to see some identification," Brad announced loud enough for gathering spectators to hear. "Standard procedure for suspicious individuals." "Suspicious how?" Tara's constitutional knowledge engaged automatically. "What specific behavior or crime do you suspect me of?" Brad's face reddened. Her expertise clearly irritated him, challenging his authority in front of witnesses. "Don't get smart with me. You people always think you know better than law enforcement." The phrase, "you people," landed like a physical blow. Tara felt generations of ancestors stirring in her blood. Enslaved people who couldn't read law books, grandparents who couldn't vote, parents who couldn't attend integrated schools. "You people," Tara repeated, her voice gaining strength. "What exactly do you mean by that, officer?" Phone cameras began rising in the gathering crowd, some recording, others calling friends and family. The incident was already spreading across social media networks, hashtags forming, outrage building. "You know exactly what I mean." Brad's mask slipped completely. "Uppity types who think a fancy outfit and big words make them equal to decent folks." Tony shifted nervously, recognizing the conversation's dangerous turn. "Brad, maybe we should just—" "Shut up, Garcia. I'm handling this." Tara slowly reached into her purse, movements deliberate and visible. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from rage carefully controlled. She produced her Federal Bar Association card and driver's license. Brad snatched the documents, examining them with exaggerated suspicion. "Tara Wilson, Jackson Ward. Figures. You're one of those activists, aren't you? Probably got some civil rights organization paying you to cause trouble." I'm a practicing attorney with the federal bar. My credentials are legitimate. We'll see about that. Brad pulled out his radio, static, crackling. Dispatch. Need you to run a background check on Tara Wilson, date of birth. Officer Williams. Tara's voice cut through radio static. You have no legal basis for detaining me or running my information. I haven't committed any crime, violated any ordinance, or exhibited any suspicious behavior. A white woman in designer athleisure approached cautiously. Officer, is everything all right here? This woman looks respectable enough. Brad wheeled around. Ma'am, please step back. This is police business. I just think maybe there's been a misunderstanding. Lady, mind your own damn business before I arrest you for interfering with an investigation. The woman retreated quickly, but her phone remained raised, recording. Other residents began emerging from beautiful homes, creating a concerning mix of supporters and critics. Some white neighbors nodded approvingly at Brad's actions. Others filmed nervously, torn between intervention and self-preservation. An elderly black man across the street shook his head sadly. Tara caught his eye and saw recognition there. He'd witnessed these scenes before, perhaps lived through worse. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away dew and illusions. What began as routine harassment was escalating into something far more dangerous. Brad had committed to the confrontation, but community witnesses threatened his usual immunity. The distance between routine police contact and constitutional violation narrowed with each passing moment, measured in heartbeats and held breath. Sir, I'm going to be late for an important court hearing, Tara continued, checking her watch. Unless you're placing me under arrest for a specific crime, I'm free to leave. Brad's hand moved toward his handcuffs. The gesture sent ripples of tension through the growing crowd. You know what? I think I smell marijuana. That gives me probable cause to search your person and belongings. The lie was so blatant that even Tony winced. Tara hadn't touched drugs in her life, didn't even drink wine, but she understood the game. Fabricate probable cause, justify the search, escalate the encounter. There's no marijuana odor because I don't use drugs. This is harassment, officer, and it's being recorded by multiple witnesses. Brad glanced around, noticing the phones for the first time. His authority depended on community ignorance, but these witnesses understood constitutional rights. The recording devices threatened his usual immunity. Put those phones away, he shouted at bystanders. This is official police business. But the phones kept recording. Social media notifications began pinging. Someone had already posted police harassment on Monument Avenue with Tara's location tagged. Tony approached cautiously. Brad, maybe we should let her go. She hasn't done anything wrong. Garcia, step back. I'm handling the situation. A teenage boy on his bicycle stopped to watch, recognizing the all-too-familiar dynamic. His mother quickly called him away, but not before he shouted, "Leave her alone! She's not doing anything wrong!" "Kid, get out of here before I call your parents," Brad threatened. More residents gathered, a concerning mix of supporters and critics. The demographic told the story. Concerned white faces mixing with horrified black ones. Privilege and oppression colliding on video for the world to witness. "Officer Williams, I'm asking one final time," Tara said. "Am I under arrest?" Brad's silence stretched like a held breath. The crowd waited. Cameras recorded. History held its breath. A white man in a business suit approached. "Officer, I live in this neighborhood. I can vouch that this woman walks this route regularly. She's clearly a professional heading to work." Brad spun around. "Sir, back off right now or you'll be arrested for obstruction." The man raised his hands but didn't retreat. "I'm just saying there's no crime here. She's walking to work like everyone else." "I decide what's criminal in my district," Brad growled. Tara felt the crowd's energy shifting, some toward support, others toward fear. She recognized the moment's fragility. One wrong word could turn ugly. The morning light grew stronger, casting sharper shadows through oak branches. Her phone buzzed against the concrete where Brad had thrown it. The caller ID showed Federal Courthouse. Her 8:30 meeting with Attorney General Anderson approached, while she remained detained for the crime of walking while black. A middle-aged white woman pushed through the crowd. "Officer, I think there's been a mistake. I recognize her from the newspaper. Something about federal court appointments." Brad's face twisted with fury. Community members were undermining his narrative, challenging his authority through collective resistance. "Mom, step back or I'll arrest you for interfering." The woman continued anyway. "She's been in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, federal judge nomination, I think." I said step back, but doubt was creeping into the crowd. The professional attire, sophisticated legal documents, composed dignity under pressure. It all suggested someone with actual authority rather than imagined criminality. Tara watched the community dynamic unfold. Young people instinctively recognizing injustice, while older residents hesitated between intervention and self-preservation. The generational divide played out in real time. Her briefcase lay gutted on the sidewalk, legal briefs mixing with fallen oak leaves, constitutional protections scattered like worthless paper. But inside her mind, Tara catalogued every violation, every illegal action, every civil rights abuse for the legal reckoning to come. The news van turned the corner. Channel 12's morning crew probably responding to social media alerts. Brad noticed the media attention and realized his window of unwitnessed brutality was closing rapidly. "Garcia, we need to speed this up," Brad muttered. "Search her briefcase thoroughly. I want everything documented before the bleeding hearts show up." Tony reluctantly approached Tara's scattered documents. Constitutional law cases, federal court filings, judicial nominations. Even he recognized the sophisticated legal work, but Brad's authority felt absolute in this moment. The morning sun climbed higher, casting Tara's shadow across concrete below. Two survivors of American history's darkest impulses, the black woman seeking justice and the ancient oak that had witnessed centuries of struggle. What happened next would determine whether constitutional rights meant anything when power met prejudice on American streets. Young activists began arriving, drawn by viral social media posts spreading across Richmond's networks. 20-something organizers with smartphones and strategic minds, understanding that documented police misconduct could catalyze broader change. "This is live streaming to 15,000 people already," announced a young woman with natural hair and a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Her phone captured everything in high-definition clarity. Local business owners started closing their shops in solidarity. Lisa Johnson, who owned a nearby coffee shop, flipped her open sign to closed and joined the growing crowd. "Not serving anyone until this sister gets justice," she declared. The elderly black man across the street made phone calls with arthritic fingers, spreading word through networks that had mobilized for decades. Within minutes, cars began arriving. Church members, community organizers, civil rights veterans who recognized the moment's historical significance. Reverend Michael Brown emerged from his sedan, still wearing his morning prayer clothes. The Baptist minister's presence changed the crowd's energy from angry to determined. "Lord have mercy," he whispered, seeing Tara's scattered legal documents. "They don't even know who they're messing with." Tony Garcia reviewed Tara's papers with growing unease. Federal appellate court cases, Supreme Court briefs, constitutional law articles bearing her name as primary author. The sophistication of the legal work was undeniable. "Brad, look at these documents. She's working on major federal cases. Maybe we should reconsider." "Maybe you should shut up and do your job," Brad snapped. "I don't care if she's got the Constitution tattooed on her back. On my street, she follows my rules." But his confidence was wavering. The community response exceeded anything he'd experienced. Usually witnesses dispersed quickly, intimidated by police authority. Today felt different, organized, intentional, powerful. A group of Howard University law students arrived, recognizing Tara from legal conferences. "That's Judge Wilson," one whispered urgently. "She's nominated for the Federal Court of Appeals. She's literally one of the most important civil rights attorneys in Virginia." The revelation rippled through the crowd like electricity. Federal judge nominee, constitutional law expert, civil rights champion. Brad Williams wasn't just harassing a random citizen. He was assaulting one of America's most distinguished legal minds. Dr. Marcus Thompson, a local community activist, began organizing the response with military precision. "Everyone with phones, keep recording from different angles. We need multiple perspectives." Someone called Channel 6 and Channel 8. Channel 12's already here. Business owners continued arriving to show support. The owner of a nearby bookstore brought folding chairs for elderly witnesses. A restaurant owner provided free water and snacks. The community was transforming outrage into infrastructure. Church leaders from 3 different denominations gathered in a prayer circle. Their whispered supplications carried across Monument Avenue's morning air. Lord, protect this woman. Give her strength. Let justice prevail. Young activists posted updates across social platforms, Instagram stories, TikTok videos, Twitter threads, Facebook live streams. Hashtags multiplied. Show justice for Judge Wilson. Show Monument Avenue harassment. Police brutality. Federal judge abuse. The story was going national in real time. Tony's radio crackled with his supervisor's voice. Unit 23, what's your status on Monument Avenue? We're getting multiple calls about a large disturbance. Before Tony could respond, Brad grabbed the radio. Unit 23 to dispatch. Conducting routine arrest. Everything under control. Copy that. Be advised. News media responding to your location. Brad glanced at the Channel 12 van, then at the Channel 6 truck arriving, then at the crowd now numbering over 50 people. His carefully constructed narrative of authority was cracking like old paint. A group of federal public defenders arrived, having heard about one of their colleagues being harassed. That's Tara Wilson, one announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. She's argued cases before the Supreme Court. She's being confirmed as a federal judge. The crowd erupted in angry murmurs. A Supreme Court attorney, a federal judge nominee. Brad Williams had arrested one of the nation's most distinguished legal minds for walking while black. Social media metrics exploded. 50,000 views and climbing, 2,000 shares, 500 comments demanding justice. The incident was trending in Richmond, then Virginia, then nationally. Cable news producers were already making phone calls. Tara remained pressed against the ancient oak, zip ties cutting into her wrists. But she watched the community mobilization with professional interest. This was democracy in action. Citizens using technology, organization, and collective action to demand accountability. Her phone continued buzzing against the concrete. Missed calls from the Attorney General, the federal court clerk, the Senate Judiciary Committee. Each unanswered call represented institutional power waiting for her arrival. What Brad Williams didn't yet understand was that his routine harassment had evolved into a federal case with national implications. The tree that held Tara captive would soon become a symbol of resistance. Comment your country and city below. Let's see where people stand against police discrimination worldwide. Your participation shows that dignity knows no borders. Turn around and put your hands on that tree, Brad commanded, his voice carrying desperation disguised as authority. We're going to settle this right now. The ancient oak had witnessed Richmond's entire complicated history. Slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, civil rights, and now this moment when past and present collided in digital real time. Tara's palms pressed against the rough bark, feeling grooves cut deep by centuries of weather and witness. The tree's surface felt cold despite the warming morning sun, its texture marking her skin like accusations. Brad forced her arms higher, zip ties biting into her wrists with surgical precision. Thought you were hot with all that legal talk, didn't you? Let's see how smart you sound now. The crowd grew larger, 60 people, then 70. Civil rights veterans stood beside college students, church members next to business owners, creating a human amphitheater of witnesses documenting constitutional violation in real time. This is unconscionable, Reverend Brown spoke into his phone, live streaming to his congregation. We are witnessing the lynching of Lady Justice herself. Reporter Sarah Martinez pushed forward with her microphone. This is Sarah Martinez reporting live from Monument Avenue, where a federal judge nominee is currently zip-tied to a tree by Richmond police officer Brad Williams. The words federal judge nominee echoed through the crowd like thunder. Even Brad hesitated momentarily, but his commitment to humiliation overrode rational assessment. Are you carrying any weapons, drugs, or stolen property? Each question came with increased pressure against Tara's body, his hands lingering inappropriately during the pat-down. You're violating my Fourth Amendment rights, Tara managed, her voice muffled against bark. You're what? Brad laughed loudly for the crowd's benefit. Lady, the only rights you got are the ones I give you, and right now you got the right to shut up. Dr. Marcus Thompson coordinated media response from his phone. CNN was sending a crew. MSNBC wanted a live interview. Fox News requested comment. The story was exploding beyond local news into national consciousness. A white teenager with purple hair and multiple piercings stepped forward boldly. "This is screwed up. She's not doing anything wrong." Brad advanced menacingly. "Watch your mouth, punk, and pull up your pants while you're at it. I'll say whatever I want. This is America, not Nazi Germany." The Nazi comparison hit Brad like a physical blow, his face reddened with fury, fists clenching. But the teenager's friends surrounded him protectively, a diverse group unified by youthful idealism and smartphone documentation. Tara felt the community's energy building around her like electrical charge. Young people instinctively recognizing injustice, while older residents moved beyond hesitation toward direct action. Her briefcase contents scattered across Monument Avenue told their own story. Constitutional law cases, federal appellate decisions, Supreme Court briefs. The evidence of her legal expertise mixed with fallen oak leaves, creating a visual metaphor for justice trampled. "Look at all these credit cards," Brad announced, dumping Tara's purse contents onto the sidewalk with deliberate violence. "Bet half of them are stolen. We got ourselves a real criminal here, folks." Tara's driver's license landed face up, clearly showing her Jackson Ward address. Brad examined it with exaggerated suspicion. Tara Wilson, sounds made up, probably fake ID to go with the Fake Lawyer Act. But social media was providing real-time fact-checking. Multiple posts now contained screenshots from legal databases showing Tara Wilson's federal bar membership, her Supreme Court admission, her judicial nomination announcement. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Video of a distinguished federal attorney bound to a tree, while officer insisted she was a criminal impersonator. Church leaders began singing "We Shall Overcome" in low, powerful voices that carried across the morning air. The hymn transformed the scene from harassment documentation into historical witness. A news helicopter circled overhead, capturing aerial footage that would play on networks worldwide. Richmond Police Department's phone lines jammed with calls from citizens, journalists, and elected officials demanding explanation. Mayor Patricia Williams received urgent briefings while driving to City Hall. Governor Susan Taylor's press secretary fielded questions from national reporters. Federal officials monitored the situation from Washington. Brad pulled out his phone, snapping photos of Tara bound against the tree. "Going to document this arrest real good. Show everyone what happens when you resist police authority." Each camera flash burned Tara's dignity deeper, but also created evidence for future federal prosecution. Brad was documenting his own constitutional violations with meticulous precision. Tony Garcia stepped forward desperately. "Brad, we need to end this." "Look around. There are news helicopters. Federal officials are probably watching. This is becoming an international incident." But Brad was beyond rational thought, feeding off crowd energy and adrenaline-fueled authority. He didn't yet understand that Tara Wilson's phone contained direct connections to the highest levels of American government. The next call would change everything. Tara's phone rang with electronic persistence against the concrete. The caller ID glowed bright in the morning sunlight. Governor's office. Brad noticed the display and smirked with cruel satisfaction. Well, look who's getting calls from the governor. Probably some telemarketer pretending to be important. Let's have some fun with this." The crowd pressed closer, sensing something significant about to unfold. Phone cameras focused tighter. Reporter Sarah Martinez positioned herself for optimal coverage of whatever was about to happen. Brad held Tara's phone high, showing the crowd the caller ID. "Everyone look at this. Our little criminal here thinks she's so important. The governor's calling her personally." Laughter rippled through some spectators, the same people who had nodded approvingly at Tara's humiliation. Brad fed off their energy, his confidence swelling with audience approval. "Answer it," Tara said quietly, her voice barely audible against the tree bark. "What?" Brad leaned closer, enjoying his power over her. "Answer the phone, put it on speaker." Brad's eyes lit up with malicious glee. "Oh, this is perfect. Everyone's going to hear whatever scam this is." He swiped to answer immediately, hitting the speaker button for maximum entertainment value. "Ladies and gentlemen, live entertainment courtesy of our fake lawyer." The crowd fell silent as a crisp, authoritative female voice filled the morning air. Governor Susan Taylor's distinctive tone, familiar from countless press conferences and political broadcasts, cut through the October breeze like a blade. "Tara? Tara Wilson?" Brad grinned wider, preparing to expose what he assumed was an elaborate fraud. "Sorry, Governor," he said mockingly into the phone. "Tara's a little tied up right now. This is Officer Brad Williams, Richmond Police Department." A pause that felt like eternity. Then Governor Taylor's voice turned sharp with concern. "Officer Williams, why do you have Judge Wilson's phone? Is everything all right?" The word judge hung in the air like a thunderclap. Brad's confident expression flickered momentarily, but he pushed forward, still convinced he was exposing a scam. "Judge Wilson?" Brad laughed loudly. "Lady, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but this is just some troublemaker we picked up for disturbing the peace. Officer Williams." The governor's voice turned ice cold. "You are speaking to the governor of Virginia. The woman whose phone you have answered is Tara Wilson, whom the Senate Judiciary Committee confirmed 30 minutes ago as the youngest appointee to the Federal Court of Appeals. Now explain to me immediately why you have her phone." The words hit the crowd like a physical force. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones paused their recording as operators absorbed the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Tara Wilson, bound to a tree with zip ties, was a newly confirmed federal judge. Brad's face drained of color. His hand holding the phone began to tremble. She can't be... This is some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake, Officer Williams. I was calling to personally congratulate Judge Wilson on her unanimous confirmation. The swearing-in ceremony is scheduled for this afternoon. Now I ask again, why do you have her phone?" Tony Garcia stepped backward as if struck. His face went ash-gray as reality crashed over him. They had just arrested and humiliated one of the youngest federal judges in American history. The crowd erupted in chaos. Supporters who had encouraged Brad's actions now backed away rapidly, suddenly understanding their complicity in assaulting a federal judicial officer. Others surged forward supportively, offering Tara assistance. Brad looked frantically at Tara bound against the tree, then at the scattered federal court documents bearing her name, then at the crowd of witnesses recording everything. The professional briefcase, the sophisticated legal papers, the composed dignity under pressure. It all made horrifying sense. "Governor Taylor," Tara spoke clearly toward the phone, her voice carrying despite her position against the tree. "I'm currently zip-tied to an oak tree on Monument Avenue because Officer Williams decided I didn't belong in this neighborhood." The silence that followed felt apocalyptic. When Governor Taylor's voice returned, it trembled with barely controlled fury. "Officer Williams, you will release Judge Wilson immediately. I'm contacting Police Chief Patricia Davis directly. This incident will be investigated to the fullest extent of federal law." Brad's hands shook violently as he fumbled for his knife to cut Tara's restraints. The zip ties fell away like broken chains. Tara rubbed her wrists slowly, circulation returning with painful precision. Red marks circled her skin where the plastic had bitten deep, evidence that would photograph well in federal court. Brad stumbled backward, his career crashing down around him in real time. "I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? She didn't say she was a federal judge." "She shouldn't have needed to," Tara said quietly, her judicial authority emerging like sunrise after darkness. "Every citizen deserves protection from unlawful detention, regardless of their title or position." The crowd erupted in vindication. 70 people who had witnessed constitutional violation now celebrated constitutional justice. Phones captured every moment of Brad's professional destruction. Tony Garcia pulled out his own phone with shaking hands, calling their supervisor. His whispered conversation carried fragments across the morning air. "Chief, we have a situation. Massive situation. Federal judge. National news." "We're finished." Governor Taylor's voice continued over speakerphone, coordinating response from the highest levels of state government. "Judge Wilson, I'm dispatching State Police Internal Affairs immediately. This incident requires federal oversight given the civil rights violations involved." Brad overheard, and his knees buckled. Federal oversight meant FBI involvement. Civil rights violations carried serious prison time. His 8-year police career disintegrated with each word from the governor's lips. Reporter Sarah Martinez pushed forward, microphone extended toward Tara. "Judge Wilson, can you comment on what just happened here?" Tara looked directly into the news camera, her dignity intact despite the morning's humiliation. Around her, the community that had mobilized for justice waited for her response. "What happened here happens to countless citizens every day. The difference is, I have the power to ensure it never happens again." The statement would become a rallying cry for police reform movements nationwide. Social media posts multiplied exponentially. 100,000 views, 500,000 views, trending nationally within minutes. Police Chief Patricia Davis arrived in record time, sirens wailing through Monument Avenue's typically quiet morning. Her patrol car screeched to a halt as she surveyed the scene. Dozens of witnesses, national media coverage, and a federal judge straightening her blazer after being bound to a tree. "Williams!" Chief Davis's voice boomed across the street. "Step away from Judge Wilson immediately!" Brad stumbled toward his supervisor, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. "Chief, I didn't know who she was. She was walking through the neighborhood and I thought..." "You thought what? That walking while black was a crime?" Chief Davis cut him off, her words sharp enough to draw blood. "Williams, you're suspended without pay pending investigation. Badge and weapon. Now." Brad's hands shook as he removed his badge, the symbol of authority he had wielded so carelessly minutes earlier. The metal felt impossibly heavy as he placed it in Chief Davis's palm. His service weapon followed, stripped of its power to intimidate. "Garcia, you too," Chief Davis continued. "Your failure to intervene makes you complicit." Tony's badge joined Brad's in the Chief's collection. 2 careers ending in real time, while cameras documented every moment of their professional destruction. Tara approached the cluster of officers, her judicial presence commanding immediate attention. Chief Davis removed her hat respectfully, a gesture Brad never offered during 20 minutes of harassment. "Judge Wilson, on behalf of the Richmond Police Department, I offer my sincere apologies for this unconscionable treatment. These officers will face the full consequences of their actions." "Chief Davis, this isn't about apologies," Tara responded, her voice carrying the authority of federal judicial appointment. "This is about systemic change. How many other citizens have suffered similar treatment without cameras recording or governors calling?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had burned too long. Chief Davis had no easy answer, because Tara's point cut to the heart of policing's deepest failures. Federal agents were already en route. FBI Civil Rights Division investigators, U.S. Marshals, Department of Justice attorneys. Brad Williams had unknowingly triggered the full weight of federal law enforcement against himself. The elderly black man who had witnessed everything from across the street approached slowly, his walker clicking against concrete. Tara recognized the pain in his weathered eyes, decades of witnessing similar scenes with different outcomes. "Young lady," he said softly, "thank you for having the strength to stand up. Some of us have been waiting our whole lives to see justice get her day." Tara took his frail hand gently. "Sir, justice isn't something that belongs to one person. It belongs to all of us. Today, we all learned that." The ancient oak tree stood as witness to transformation. Its branches, which had held Tara captive, now reached toward sky that held no limits for those brave enough to demand accountability from power. Tara checked her watch. 8:45 a.m. The Attorney General still waited for their meeting, but this incident had become more important than any confirmation hearing. The people of Virginia were receiving a masterclass in constitutional rights delivered by their newest federal judge. What happened next would determine whether this moment became catalyst for lasting change or another forgotten injustice in America's complicated relationship with equality. Within hours, FBI Special Agent Maria Garcia arrived with a team of civil rights investigators. The federal response was swift and comprehensive, exactly what Brad Williams had feared and Tony Garcia had dreaded. "Judge Wilson, I'm Special Agent Garcia with the FBI Civil Rights Division. We're here to investigate potential violations of federal civil rights statutes." Maria Garcia's professional demeanor carried the weight of federal authority that local police couldn't intimidate or dismiss. The investigation began immediately. Crime scene tape surrounded the oak tree where Tara had been bound. Federal photographers documented everything: zip tie marks on bark, scattered legal documents, physical evidence of constitutional violation. Brad sat in the back of a federal vehicle, reading his rights while handcuffed, an ironic reversal that didn't escape anyone's notice. The Miranda warning he had ignored giving Tara was now protecting him from his own incriminating statements. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in federal court." Tony Garcia cooperated immediately, providing detailed statements about Brad's pattern of racist behavior. "Officer Williams constantly made racist comments during our patrols. He specifically targeted black citizens for unnecessary stops. When I tried to object, he told me to shut up or find another partner." The investigation revealed Brad's social media history. Post after post revealing deep racial hatred and conspiracy theories about minority takeovers of law enforcement. Screenshots showed him celebrating other officers' excessive force incidents and sharing memes depicting black citizens as inherently criminal. Dr. Marcus Thompson coordinated community response as the story exploded across national media. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, every major network sent crews. The incident transcended local news to become a symbol of systemic police racism. "This is bigger than Richmond," Dr. Thompson told reporters. "Judge Wilson's experience represents what happens to ordinary citizens every day, except they don't have federal judicial appointments to protect them." Tara's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, speaking invitations, legal organizations offering support. But her focus remained on institutional change rather than personal vindication. Federal prosecutors reviewed evidence for potential charges: deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy against rights, hate crime enhancements. Each charge carried serious prison time. Richmond Police Department phones jammed with calls from citizens reporting similar experiences with Brad Williams. 17 additional victims came forward with stories of racial harassment and unlawful detention. The pattern was clear and documented. Brad had systematically targeted black citizens throughout his career, using badge authority to humiliate and intimidate. Tara's case opened floodgates that revealed institutional failure at every level. Mayor Patricia Williams received urgent briefings about potential federal intervention. "How did this officer remain on duty with multiple complaints?" she demanded. The answer revealed supervisory failures, complaints buried to protect department statistics, witnesses discouraged from filing reports, systematic cover-ups that enabled Brad's continued abuse. 3 additional supervisors faced their own federal investigations for civil rights conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The corruption reached higher than anyone imagined. Tara testified before FBI investigators with clinical precision, describing each constitutional violation Brad committed. Her legal expertise transformed her from victim to expert witness, methodically building the federal case. Officer Williams' actions violated the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection, and multiple federal civil rights statutes, Tara explained to federal prosecutors. Social media metrics continued exploding. 2 million views, 50,000 shares trending internationally. The hashtag #DoorJustice for Judge Wilson became a global symbol of resistance to police racism. International media picked up the story. BBC News featured it prominently. Canadian networks interviewed civil rights experts. The incident became case study material for law schools worldwide. Brad's wife Sarah filed for divorce within days. Their house entered foreclosure as legal bills mounted. Sarah took their 2 children to her mother's house, seeking anonymity from their father's infamy. Federal grand jury proceedings began in Richmond's federal courthouse. The same building where Tara should have been meeting with Attorney General Anderson became the venue for prosecuting her constitutional violations. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Davis led the prosecution team. Officer Williams didn't just violate Judge Wilson's rights, he violated the constitutional foundation of American policing. Legal experts predicted Brad faced 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Civil rights violations carried mandatory minimum sentences, and hate crime enhancements could double the penalty. Richmond Police Department implemented emergency reforms, mandatory body cameras, civilian oversight boards, bias training for all officers. Chief Davis announced zero tolerance for racial harassment. But Tara understood that real change required more than policy adjustments. It demanded cultural transformation, accountability mechanisms, and community oversight of law enforcement power. The oak tree became an unofficial pilgrimage site. People left flowers, handwritten notes, small tokens of solidarity. Children asked parents to explain why the nice judge lady was tied to a tree for walking. Federal investigation continued expanding. Brad Williams had triggered the most comprehensive civil rights investigation in Richmond's modern history, all because he couldn't imagine that a black woman belonged on Monument Avenue. 3 months later, the federal courthouse buzzed with unprecedented activity. Media credentials were limited due to overwhelming interest. Overflow crowds watched proceedings on courthouse monitors as United States vs. Brad Williams began. Brad sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit, his former authority reduced to ankle shackles and supervised bathroom breaks. His court-appointed attorney shuffled through evidence documenting his pattern of racist behavior spanning his entire career. Your Honor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Davis addressed Federal Judge Margaret Wilson. The evidence shows Defendant Williams violated not only Judge Wilson's civil rights, but those of dozens of other citizens. His actions represent a pattern of deliberate racial targeting that undermines our constitutional foundation. Tara sat in the gallery's front row, her judicial robes exchanged for a simple navy suit. Since her confirmation ceremony 3 months ago, she had presided over landmark cases protecting voting rights and employment discrimination. The incident that could have destroyed her instead transformed her into the nation's youngest federal civil rights champion. The prosecution's opening statement painted a devastating picture. Officer Williams didn't just arrest Judge Wilson, he humiliated her, degraded her, and violated her constitutional rights in front of dozens of witnesses. But this case isn't just about what happened to one person. It's about protecting every American citizen from abuse of police power. Brad's defense attorney attempted damage control. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Officer Williams made mistakes, but he believed he was protecting his community. His actions, while regrettable, don't rise to the level of federal civil rights violations. The prosecution responded by playing body camera footage from Brad's previous encounters. Elderly black men forced from their cars during routine traffic stops. Young black women subjected to invasive searches based on fabricated suspicions. Teenagers handcuffed for walking through predominantly white neighborhoods. A pattern of systematic racism disguised as law enforcement. Tony Garcia took the witness stand, his police career already ended, his immunity deal requiring complete cooperation. Officer Williams constantly made racist comments. He called black citizens troublemakers and criminals before any interaction. He told me our job was keeping them in their place. Expert witness Dr. Vanessa Collins, a civil rights historian from Georgetown University, contextualizes Brad's actions within centuries of police abuse targeting black Americans. What happened to Judge Wilson represents a continuum of racial control dating back to slave patrols. The zip ties and tree binding specifically echo lynching imagery designed to terrorize and dehumanize. The jury, 6 white members, 4 black, 2 Latino, listened intently as Dr. Collins explained how Brad's language and actions fit established patterns of racially motivated police misconduct. Tara testified with prosecutorial precision, transforming personal trauma into legal evidence. Officer Williams detained me without reasonable suspicion, searched my property without consent, and subjected me to physical restraint without legal justification. Each action violated clearly established constitutional law. Her testimony was devastating because of her legal expertise. She didn't just describe what happened. She explained exactly which constitutional amendments and federal statutes Brad violated, providing the legal framework for conviction. Officer Williams told me I didn't belong in that neighborhood. He said, "You people need to learn their place." He bound me to a tree like common criminals were treated during the Jim Crow era. These weren't mistakes. They were deliberate acts of racial intimidation. Richmond Police Chief Patricia Davis testified about departmental changes implemented after Tara's case. "We've mandated bias training, civilian oversight and body cameras for all officers. Judge Wilson's experience revealed institutional failures we can never allow to repeat. The federal investigation had discovered Brad's supervisor knew about previous complaints, but buried them to protect department statistics. 3 additional supervisors faced their own federal charges for civil rights conspiracy. Brad's former partner from years earlier, Officer James Miller, provided devastating testimony about Brad's escalating racism. Williams started talking about a race war coming to America. He said black people needed to be put back in their place before they destroyed everything. The prosecution presented financial evidence showing Brad attempted to profit from his notoriety. Book deals with white supremacist publishers, speaking engagements at extremist rallies, merchandise sales featuring his image binding Tara to the tree. Each attempt to monetize racism added additional charges to his federal indictment. Dr. Michael Robertson, a forensic psychologist, analyzed Brad's mental state during the incident. Mr. Williams displayed classic signs of narcissistic personality disorder, combined with deep-seated racial animus. His inability to recognize Judge Wilson's authority, even after learning her identity, demonstrates complete devaluation of black humanity. The trial's climax came when prosecutors played Brad's jailhouse phone calls, conversations with white supremacist groups offering financial support in exchange for his martyrdom. "They made me famous," Brad bragged to a caller. "I showed the world what happens when they try to take over our neighborhoods." The evidence was overwhelming. Video documentation, witness testimony, expert analysis, Brad's own recorded statements. Everything pointed toward deliberate civil rights violations motivated by racial hatred. Federal civil rights law provided no mercy for officers who abused constitutional protections while wearing badges of authority. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned to Judge Margaret Wilson's courtroom. The tension was palpable as Foreman Thomas Anderson, a retired teacher from Henrico County, stood with the verdict. On the charge of deprivation of civil rights under color of law, we find the defendant Brad Williams guilty. The first verdict hit the courtroom like thunder. Tara remained composed, but felt vindication coursing through her veins. Justice was speaking with its own voice. On the charge of conspiracy against rights, we find the defendant Brad Williams guilty. 2 for 2. The jury had understood that Brad's actions weren't mistakes or poor judgment. They were deliberate constitutional violations motivated by racial hatred. On the charge of hate crime enhancement, we find the defendant Brad Williams guilty. The hate crime finding was crucial. It acknowledged that Brad targeted Tara specifically because of her race, transforming harassment into federal civil rights violation with mandatory minimum sentences. Brad showed no emotion as the verdicts were read, his delusions of righteousness intact even in defeat. His court-appointed attorney slumped in defeat, knowing that federal convictions carried serious prison time with limited appeal options. Judge Wilson's sentencing hearing drew national attention 3 weeks later. Civil rights leaders filled the gallery alongside Tara's family and supporters. Brad's few remaining allies stayed away, his extremist ideology finally recognized as criminal behavior. Tara's impact statement moved the courtroom to tears. "Officer Williams didn't just attack me that morning. He attacked every citizen's right to walk freely without fear of harassment based on skin color. He attacked the Constitution he swore to defend. Most importantly, he attacked the very idea that America belongs to all Americans." Character witnesses testified about Brad's pattern of racism extending beyond his police career. Former neighbors described racist rants at community meetings. Former classmates recalled his harassment of minority students in high school. The psychological evaluation revealed disturbing findings. Brad demonstrated no remorse, blamed his victims for provoking him, and maintained that white Americans were under attack by minority advancement. Dr. Robertson's testimony was particularly damning. Mr. Williams represents a clear and present danger to civil rights and community safety. His racial animus is deeply entrenched and unlikely to respond to rehabilitation efforts. Brad's mother took the stand pleading for mercy, describing her son's difficult childhood and claiming he wasn't really racist. But cross-examination revealed she had shared many of Brad's social media posts and attended rallies supporting his actions. The prosecution presented evidence of Brad's attempts to profit from racism while awaiting trial. Book deals with extremist publishers, speaking fees from white supremacist groups, merchandise featuring his image binding Tara to the tree. Your Honor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Davis argued, Defendant Williams has shown no remorse, attempted to profit from his crimes, and continues to represent a threat to civil rights. The maximum sentence is not only warranted, it's necessary to protect future victims. Judge Margaret Wilson had presided over civil rights cases for 20 years, but rarely encountered such clear-cut constitutional violations. The evidence was overwhelming, the defendant unrepentant, the community impact devastating. Brad Williams, Judge Wilson addressed the defendant directly, your actions represent everything wrong with American policing. You perverted your oath to protect and serve into a license to terrorize citizens based on their race. Brad stared defiantly ahead, refusing to acknowledge the judge's authority, even in his moment of accountability. The court finds that your actions were premeditated, systematic, and motivated entirely by racial hatred. You showed no mercy to Judge Wilson, and this court will show none to you. The sentence was harsh but justified. Brad Williams, you are hereby sentenced to 8 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are permanently barred from law enforcement employment and prohibited from possessing firearms. Tara watched Brad led away in shackles, feeling not triumph but profound sadness for opportunities wasted and trust broken. Justice had been served, but the larger work of police reform was just beginning. Outside the courthouse, Tara addressed gathered media with characteristic grace. Today's verdict affirms that no one, regardless of their badge or uniform, stands above the Constitution. But our work isn't finished. Real justice requires transforming the systems that enabled Officer Williams' abuse of power. The federal conviction sent shockwaves through law enforcement nationwide. Police departments implemented new training programs, accountability measures, and community oversight boards. Brad's case became required study material in police academies. Richmond Police Department operated under federal consent decree, with court-appointed monitors, ensuring compliance with constitutional policing standards. Crime statistics remained stable, while complaints of racial harassment dropped 80%. Tony Garcia, Brad's former partner, worked construction now, his law enforcement career permanently ended. He testified at Brad's trial, providing crucial evidence that secured conviction. Tara had written his parole board supporting his cooperation, believing redemption required opportunity. The ancient oak tree on Monument Avenue became an unofficial memorial where people left flowers and notes. School children visited weekly, learning how ordinary citizens could demand accountability from those in power. Federal precedent was established. Police officers who violated civil rights would face serious consequences in federal court. 1 year later, federal judge Tara Wilson stood in her chambers overlooking Richmond's transformed skyline. The same morning light that had witnessed her humiliation now illuminated a portrait of Thurgood Marshall hanging beside her desk, a reminder that justice travels a long road but eventually finds its destination. Her calendar showed back-to-back meetings with legislators crafting police accountability measures. Tara's experience had transformed her from judicial nominee to national civil rights leader. Speaking requests arrived daily from organizations fighting systemic racism in their communities. Tyler, now 18 and bound for Howard University's pre-law program, visited his mother's chambers regularly. "Mom, my government teacher wants to know if you'll speak to our class about constitutional rights." Tara smiled, remembering her own teenage dreams of using law to create change. "Tell her yes. Every young person should understand their rights before someone tries to take them away." Jasmine, 16 and already showing her mother's analytical mind, interned with the Virginia ACLU during summer break. "I'm writing a research paper about how your case changed police training nationwide. Did you know 17 states adopted new bias training requirements after the video went viral?" The video. Tara still received messages from strangers who watched Brad Williams' racist tirade and her dignified response. Teachers used the footage in civics classes. Police academies screened it during ethics training. Her judicial decisions reflected lived experience with injustice. She authored the majority opinion, striking down voter suppression laws targeting minority communities. Her criminal justice reform rulings prioritized rehabilitation over punishment. Her employment discrimination decisions protected workers Brad Williams would have dismissed as troublemakers. Richmond Police Department's transformation became a national model. Chief Patricia Davis had implemented community policing philosophy, emphasizing service over control. Officer recruitment now emphasized diverse candidates with strong community ties, rather than military backgrounds seeking authority. Brad Williams served his federal sentence in protective custody, his former law enforcement status making general population too dangerous. His appeals had all failed. His conviction stood as precedent for prosecuting police civil rights violations. His ex-wife Sarah had completed their divorce and moved to Oregon with their children, seeking anonymity from their father's infamy. The children grew up knowing their father was in prison for hurting people because of their skin color. Late afternoon shadows fell across Tara's desk as she reviewed tomorrow's cases. A death penalty appeal, a gerrymandering challenge, a same-sex marriage rights dispute. Each decision would shape America's future, guided by wisdom gained from personal injustice, transformed into institutional change. Her phone rang with a familiar number. Governor Susan Taylor calling for monthly check-ins that began the morning Brad Williams made his career-ending mistake. "Tara, how are you handling the caseload? The legislative session's been demanding on everyone." "Governor, I've never felt more purpose in my work. Surviving Officer Williams' hatred taught me that justice isn't just legal theory. It's human dignity protected by institutional courage." Tyler and Jasmine arrived for family dinner, their conversations mixing teenage concerns with sophisticated discussions about constitutional law and social justice. They had inherited their mother's commitment to equality without inheriting her trauma. Mrs. Dorothy Jackson, now 79, tended a memorial garden planted where Tara's legal papers had scattered that morning. The flowers bloomed in constitutional colors, red roses for courage, white lilies for justice, blue hydrangeas for truth. School children visited weekly, learning how ordinary citizens could demand accountability from those in power. The garden became a living classroom about democracy in action. The ancient oak tree still stood on Monument Avenue, its branches reaching toward sky that held no limits for those brave enough to demand justice. Tourists stopped regularly, taking pictures where federal judge Tara Wilson proved that power built on hatred eventually consumes itself. As evening settled over Richmond, Tara reflected on the journey from humiliation to transformation. Brad Williams had intended to destroy her dignity, but instead revealed her strength. His racism exposed systemic failures, but also illuminated paths toward healing. The oak tree would always remind her of that morning when constitutional crisis became constitutional triumph. Not through violence or vengeance, but through law, community, and the unwavering belief that America belonged to all Americans. Tara closed her chambers thinking of tomorrow's cases, next month's speaking engagements, and next year's opportunities to expand justice for all Americans. Brad Williams had given her a moment of pain, but a lifetime of purpose. Share this story if you believe dignity belongs to every person walking our streets. Comment below. When you witness injustice in your community, will you be the voice that says, "This stops here"? In your workplace, your neighborhood, your daily life, what will you do when power meets prejudice and cameras aren't rolling? Thank you to everyone who typed justice and shared your countries and cities with us. Seeing people stand against discrimination from Brazil to Canada, from the UK to Australia, it proves that human dignity is a universal value. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more tales of courage transforming injustice. Until next time, remember that one person's courage can change an entire system.